I know I gotta keep you by my side till the day I die. 'Cause baby, ecstasy is in my hand. Oh, when I'm holding yours in mine and walking in the sand. Oh, baby, you know it's fine. But now you done and pissed me off. You went and done something you shouldn't have done. Baby, I'm mad. I'm going on. Oh, I'm going on.
Coffee's almost ready. Almost. But not quite. I'm trying. I'm rushing. I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off. And what I realize is that, age is a state of mind. Except for when it comes to the condition of your skin and the color of your hair and how long it takes you to get off the toilet. Too long in my opinion. Far too long. I'm starting to want one of those numbers, the numbers of like how much you sleep in your life. I'm wondering how much of my life I now spend sitting on the damn toilet, waiting for it to end. Anyway. Coffee. There we go. The Keurig is complete. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Lost-Begotten's Fake TV channel. here on YouTube, also known as Fake TV, or Fake TV, also known as YouTube. Oh, the TV just turned on. I'm not sure what I want to do with it now, but it got to turn on now. I'll put it on something, I'm going to put it on a game. So it won't fucking turn off again. Give me 1 second. So, I've now had 3 sicknesses in 3 weeks. Just fighting off one plague after another. Yay, the school season started again. So, let me blow my nose for a second here. And, figure out what the hell controller goes to which PlayStation. Oh, there we go. And I'm just going to load 13 because I don't really know what else to do. Let me mute this right quick so I can blow my nose. Okay, much better. Oh, ears popped. Ear popped. Okay. I'm just going to pretend that's not happening and just enjoy my coffee. So, thanks for hopping channels and finding us over here, Mr. Relic Turtle. Mr. Turtle. I was going to call it, I do the Mr. in the last name, you know. Because we're formal. We're very formal here. Oh, yes. Oh, he's getting heavy with it right off. Wait, what are we doing with space-time? Howdy, Mr. Conway. Let me drink some more coffee and then read this. Or pack a bowl of Fruit Loops or something like that. I guess I don't need to be playing the copyrighted music in the background. Material on this channel may be material of materiality with material. Maybe copyrighted material. Yeah. I don't know why I had that voice in my head when I typed that little disclaimer notice, but I can't read it now without getting that voice in my head again. I'm not. What voice is that? Material. It's like Charles Barkley in 20 more years. That material's terrible. You know, something sounds familiar about it though. So, just before I figure out what the hell else my bearings are, a little update on Final Fantasy 13. I'm really starting to get bored with it. Like, I can see why they made the sequel expansion things. I just wish they made, like, an actual expansion for the first one. Because there's so much there that... It's got so much potential, but it's just not quite there, you know? It's not quite where it needs to be. Oh, this coffee is right where it needs to be. Kitten, you are not right where you need to be. I do not need you on my lap in my face. What are you doing, kitten? No, don't mess with the camera wire. Skyrim, huh? Had you mentioned that on a previous broadcast or something? I think somebody typed that recently. Skyrim. And for some reason, last time I read it Skyrim. I don't know why. The Skyrim seems to make a little more sense. But anyways, how long was that broadcast on Easy Reefers just now? Am I like just feeling exhausted, or do I have actually reason to be exhausted? I'm fucking exhausted. My back's bugging me like I've been sitting in one position too long. 3 hours, yeah. That's a pretty long fucking broadcast. Like, let me just relate this type of work to other types of work. Or say, like, a news person at a news desk, you know? Their type of work that they do for a few hours versus the type of work that most people do for 8. I have to say that this is more exhausting. And to put it into perspective, you ever have, like, a single phone call last for, like, a really long time at work? It requires all of your attention and all of your focus, and it's just going on forever. That workday feels like a 20-hour workday because of that 2-hour phone call. Well, being a broadcaster of any sort, that's like having them phone calls, and that's your workday every day. Just you have to sit there and maintain that focus and be on the spot for other people and not like have any time to yourself. You're just sitting there on that damn phone call like, I need to fucking take a lunch break, man. Shut the fuck up already. You know, but like, just perspective, that's how broadcasters do their little 3-hour stints. It's that level of intensity. And I imagine, man, people like on MSNBC and stuff, they get really exhausted after their little shifts. Because, I don't know, or one thing I don't know, or have no data on, so I can't know either way, is whether or not it's easier or more difficult to read or to have to think of everything that you say. I have to think of everything that I say. In real time, I don't do effective planning for these broadcasts very often. Well, effective, no, I don't ever do effective planning. I don't do any planning for these broadcasts very often. So I just wind up winging it on the content, trying to find this and that and the other thing to remember that I needed to talk about. And while I can't remember things that I need to talk about, I gotta remember other shit to talk about, just so, you know, you're not sitting there staring at a fucking guy going like this. Then the, yeah, I try not to do that. I do sometimes, but I try not to. And, if you haven't done this kind of thing, the only way I can think to put the perspective on it of just how difficult it is, it's getting on that fucking client phone call that, like, doesn't even know the year, make, or model of their car, but wants you to fix it over the phone for them, you know, like... Especially, oh no, that's when the Russian trolls get on here, and I have to like remember what the hell I'm saying while they're fucking with me. That's that customer that calls the dealership, wants to speak to the service department, wants them to diagnose and tell them what to do to fix their own car, didn't want to pay you, and they just know it's the blue one. Oh, it happens. If you've worked in automotive service, if you've worked in four-wheeler or any kind of service, motorcycle service, oh, especially with motorcycles, they want you to know what dirt bike they have, by what color it is. And then you have to explain to grown people with driver's licenses that brands of motorcycles tend to have theme colors. Kawasaki has green, Suzuki has blue. Kawasaki also makes a red Ninja. Suzuki makes yellow and red Gixxers. Yamaha, however, Yamaha is almost always blue and white. Honda is almost always red, you know, like... There's a little different color for every different motorcycle manufacturer. And then the people just call up and ask you to identify the blue one. I bought it in about 98. It's the blue one. Being on the phone with that person for 3 hours straight is what it's like trying to do a live stream with people trolling you. Man, yeah, in retail or service, you meet some gems. I was only maybe 17 years old when I realized that. Working at a grocery store. This lady asked me where the mustard is. I worked the condiment aisle. I was on the end of the aisle. She was in the middle of the aisle. Right where the mustard was. And I stood where I was, did not come towards her, did not go any closer to point it out. I said, "See that big yellow section? Right next to you. That's the mustard." I had no other words. I did not know what else to say. I was glad that they at least laughed at themselves about it. I would have lost all hope for humanity at that point. Like the whole fucking aisle, there's one 4-foot section of yellow. Where's the mustard? I can understand where's the pickles, where's the ketchup. There's different green shit, different red shit. Condiment aisle, right? But the mustard? Don't let's be silly. But anyways. So thanks for joining me, Mr. Conway and Mr. Relic Turtle. And whoever else is here, feels free to say hello in the chats. We'd always be glad to hear from you. And even if I'm like, leaning on the side of the laptop or something, like, just no longer with us, these guys will chat with you and entertain you. Answer questions sometimes, keep you company sometimes. But, today, I had a little video on the Easy Reefers channel because I was filming a video. I was actually going to film a video about that subject, about the whole acclamation is the secret to keeping intimate is acclamation. I was gonna make a video about that. Then my fucking phone ran out of storage space, so I just wound up saying, good old Bill O'Reilly faction. Fuck it, we'll do it live. Bill O'Reilly fashion, not faction. I mean, I'm sure there is a Bill O'Reilly faction, but let's face it, I can't afford the bill on that kind of Viagra. Anyways. It's a Viagraholics Anonymous, the Bill O'Reilly faction, where all the retired fans of the Bill O'Reilly factory go to beat hookers to death. Oh, man. I mean, can you really look at Steve Bannon and tell me that he has never beat a hooker to death with confidence? Can you confidently tell me that that man has never beaten a hooker to death? Donald Trump. Can you look at Donald Trump in the eyes and tell me that you know for sure that he has never beaten a hooker to death? And peed on her. I mean, or 4-peeing on him or something. I don't know. There's not many things that I can't look at Donald Trump and be like, he wouldn't do that. Let's see, fucking his own daughter. Can you really look at him and say, he wouldn't do that? 1 second. Okay. So anyway. There was going to be a subject for this video. I suppose if I read the title I typed 10 minutes ago or so, I could remember the subject and discuss it. That may or may not occur just yet. Because, coffee. It is now 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm, since I finished writing the business plan out and realized how little good that really did me, I've really lost as much focus as I've lost motivation, man. And I hate getting to that point where you're out of options and you don't know what to do. Especially when that comes to your livelihood and career and shit like that, you know? So, East Coast? New York? Thought you had said, was it you that said you're from New York? Okay, so Merlin is more of a title than a name. A lot like Stalin or Putin. And during the lifetime in which I believe people refer to, let me speak in third person to not sound crazy, this particular individual as being Merlin, as much as my instincts and memories can place it, it was when I was sort of a traitor to Europe. But it was really Europe that had betrayed me and everything I believed in. And, womankind in general. And I wound up serving I don't know if you'd call him a king or like basically a black wizard. Okay. A demon. A devil. I mean, that's really what you'd call him if you saw him. I'm more on that level, so I'm more trying to understand and forgive and be their friend. But but I was, before the last wave that assaulted Europe, not far off from joining in that wave. And this is because many attempts on my life had been made in Europe. And the Templars, the Johannite Jews, the Magdalenian priestess line, and all other remaining proto-Gaelic pantheistic sects were exterminated from Europe. No, before Rasputin. As far as I can tell in history, the name at the time is Jacques de Molay. And, my memory is kind of conflicting with history in this respect, because there seems to be an entire history written to cover up what I was actually doing at a particular time. Which was not trying to get another man to fuck my wife. Okay? I was trying to revive the Thracian Empire. I was accused of raising an army to invade Europe, which we never did. But Europe had already all but fallen. And I found more kinship in the slaves of the previous generation than the brainwashed assholes of that one. So I went to Kiev. I went to the east. And I helped them organize. But I find a lot of blame for myself in a lot of things. But I'd like to believe, and I don't have any specific memory that makes it so. I'd like to believe they had dirigibles before I was there. Like, I don't think anything I taught them, and knowing me, I would have been wary of this at the time. I didn't think anything that I taught them could have been used against Europe. It was expressly for the creation of a buffer zone between the Horde and Europe. But now I'm in a time where people don't even know that the Horde exists. 500 years later, I come back. The Horde has all but taken over the world, and you kids don't even know it exists. Speechless. I have no words. Like, nobody ever related communism and Islamofascism, where they are, the area they control, and the Horde that had existed for the 3,000 years before that, expanding from that same area, from those same areas. Ever expanding. Horde. Nobody's ever related those modern events with that ongoing historical event. Well, they say the greatest trick the devil ever did was convince you that he didn't exist. Now you know what they mean by that. So anyways, this is all very on topic, so I'm glad your questions are relating to it. The fact remains, this is the event. This is the time frame that determined whether or not the Jesuit order would bring definition to what remained of what we now call Catholicism. What used to be called the World Church. That's all it was. It was just the World Church. It had the blessing of the disciples of Christ. For a time it even had the blessing of the wife of Christ, until they betrayed her. And of course, having a chauvinist like Peter in charge, that was kind of bound to happen. But anyways, as I was saying on the previous broadcast, he basically had a dissemination of wisdom from the time of the true Christ into 3 different major regions. Now, you had multiple other diasporatic regions of Jews that were matriarchal, that converted, okay, and should be considered as Christians, as feminine-oriented Christians. Most of them were in the south, in the regions that the first Christian church that was destroyed in its entirety, and all of its lands and all of its peoples were completely exterminated. Most of those areas were in that region and fell at the same time. But there were some that remained in Europe, and we have them written down today as being areas of Jews that were exterminated. And this is in some ways correct, yes, but the overall thing about his story, it's not just that it was written by the victors, it's not just that it's his story, it's that it's his story. There has been a chauvinist conspiracy, okay? And the reason why it is because the nature of its planners is that they seek the end of mankind and the end of civilization. And to make a society become more chauvinistic is to push it further and further towards entropy and eventual collapse. Now, to make a society more and more feminine is to make it more prone to conquest, and, you know, it's not all good either. There needs to be a balance, obviously. The same way your child needs a mother and a father to balance out a feminine and a masculine, or at least, you know, if you're going to adopt one of the many kids who needs adopting and you happen to be a homosexual couple, I hope that one of you's the butch and one of you's the flower, you know? But there's a lot of kids that need adopting, so I'm not going to sit there and complain. In a world where, frankly, none of the heterosexual couples are doing anywhere near of a decent job raising their fucking children. So, you don't want to talk about the plank and the splinter. If you want to even question how good of a job a homosexual couple can do raising an otherwise fucking orphan destined for jail, show me how perfectly the heterosexual Christians have been raising their children lately. Then you can bitch about that. Right. So, in backtracking and naming and uncovering much of the different evidences of this conspiracy overall, what we've basically determined on the previous channel and all of its content was that the Horde and the chauvinist rewriting of history are all the same. And it's essentially something that can give you strategic and geographic awareness of the devil's army. And we've gone back into the Bible to find out exactly how they've got there and how long they've been there. And we're going to continue some Bible studies shortly, I promise. Sometime soon. I'm kind of holding off until I see Donald Trump in handcuffs. Like, I just feel like I don't have to do it until then. But I might do it again before then. Because, let's face it, it's taken way too damn long, isn't it? But, so as we were discussing this relationship between the Horde and chauvinism and demonstrable ways you can track when someone is under the influence of an evil spirit. When people act contrary to their instincts, contrary to their logical capabilities, when people take absolute positions and are only willing to engage in circular arguments, these are signs of demon possession. And these strategies that have been used against us, and the strategies even diplomatically of Sergei Lavrov and Vladimir Putin himself, are extremely reflective of demonic mentality. Now, I know this because I've been an exorcist since I was a kid, and I, grew up being what I call an advanced Bible studier. Not an evangelical, not any sort of Bible thumper. Someone who was willing to go into every sort of esoteric and occult type knowledge once I had built a strong enough background of knowledge and faith for myself, and I did so starting at about the age of 13 to 15. And I feel like I've gained a unique insight, having successfully performed many exorcisms and teaching people. I can teach people. I have taught many people how to recognize and fight their own demons. Now, if somebody doesn't believe in demons, what I'm simply saying to you is it is a form of neuropsychosis that is contrary to anything that could be developed as an instinctive response to something, that if observed critically for long periods of time, will seem to have a sentient level of organization to its disruption of a person or a group of people's everyday lives. Their ability to succeed, their ability to progress, their ability to love. Now, when you can find the patterns of these behaviors, such as simple ones like absolutist arguments, such as circular arguments, always wanting to not answer that thing, go over to this thing, make you talk about that. No, and you got to talk about this, I'm going to go to this thing and make you talk about that. Those are circular arguments. And when they say always this or never that, they always this and they never that. What the fuck are you talking about? Nobody always this and never that. Nobody. Those are signs of a demon-possessed person. And not only is the entirety of Russian trolling and Russian influence on the racist Confederates of this country based upon these types of patterns, but what Russia has done historically is said that the strength of America is Christianity and we must target it. They have funded satanic cults. And in fact, I would charge you to find me one person who has ever said that they were Jesus, that acted really creepy in a lot of really creepy ways, that didn't have a rhetorical commonality with Russian propaganda as we know it's been expressed through people like Alex Jones and RT, the channel. Go back. Go look at what they say. They're fucking programmed communist agents and nothing more. So this empire uses deception as a tool, uses starvation as a tool, enslaves people en masse. They look like Satanists, they talk like Satanists, they act like Satanists. 3 quacks, you're out, you know? And if you go back to my sketches from 500 years ago, what I was trying to tell you is that these people that we were seeing, these people that we're seeing right now, are half-breeds. They are the result of abominations, taking slaves or hiring mercenaries. Excuse me for a second. John Constantine, motherfucker. Anyway. What they've done historically, and I can show you, and I have before, many, many maps, go and invade more lands and kidnap more people and so more, and this is very important, this is the main reason why they do it, the main point of why they do this, the main point of why the Slavic people exist and why they're called the Slavic people and why they were set free is divide and conquer. The only way you can really effectively go into a country is with people that look and act just like the people of that country. The only way you can accomplish this is by spending about 20 years kidnapping tourists and different people like that, finding people, if, once the internet's around, once you can really advance your spy net, finding people who are propagandized by you and really want to turn against their own government to begin with. And you get those people and you set them up with a nice house in Canada, you get them to have children, and get those children who have already been lovely, well propagandized by their parents to come move to America, or to start a YouTube channel where they pretend to be Americans. And the only real recorded episode of this that you can find that is related to the Horde but will demonstrate its tactics perfectly. This tactic is demonstrated perfectly with the definition of one word: Janissaries. Every fire starts with a spark, dearie. And I've been sitting here rubbing flint for years, hoping somebody would start sharing links. The more links get shared, the better. That's all I know. And it's about who you share links to. Because there are certain institutions that I established that have failed to recognize me in their arrogance. And, well, we see how much good that's doing them. Whereas if you go back, if people would have just listened to me play by play, oh, things would be so much better. So much better. But then it came to this point, and getting on with what I was saying earlier, where after exposing this chauvinist conspiracy throughout history, and how these Satanists, okay, if you read the Bible, you see that the devil and his seed have enmity with who? Man? No. With the woman and her seed. And you have 2,000 years ago the reference to the heir of the throne of the world, Mary Magdalena, referred to as a whore. If I could beat the people who came up with that lie until all of these knuckles broke, until my wrists split apart, until I had nothing but skin flopping from my elbows, I would still not be satisfied. I think I need to calm down, smoke a cigarette. But, I think that effectively, hyperbolically expresses exactly how much that pisses me off. Magdalena You can feel free to just Google the Empire of Magdalenia, and you'll see something that isn't quite the case. But if you want to understand it properly, simply overlay this map, or a map like it. And what you got to realize is that this is after the Horde had already started to come in the north and establish what we called the Saxons. Okay, and that was the second edition. There were first the Slavics, and they were the fourth edition, because there were first the escaped Jews. It was like the Mexican border, just like refugees coming. Right over, see that line that looks like a backwards S? That's a range of mountains that was purposefully built for this purpose. North of there used to be ice, and this was around the time that it had begun to thaw out. And that's when you started to see these people that called themselves Norsemen. Most of them were actually from Chechnya, and they came to kidnap the people up there in Sweden and Denmark, and took them back, bred with them, became even more fair-skinned, came back in more waves, and became the Germanics. And then you have a period in which most of the center of this is out. The Bulgars are in the east, and then what's left is called Gaul. That's it, just Gaul. No more Gael, no more Gallia, Galicia, just Gaul. And from that term we have the description of these people, because they were that one pesky nation who stood with their backs to the water against the Horde that had conquered the world. They had Gaul. And because of them, but I have no problem with the Lombardies or the Italians. It was time. Much like today, the entirety of civilization was at stake because of a chauvinist conspiracy. And back then, much like today, I had to go to extreme measures to get attention. Although I must say it seems to have been more effective back then. Even though today I have this wonderful technological platform that should be making it, well, slightly amplified at least. For the same reasons, suffering from the same deceptions, under the same pretenses, that targeted the same people, got them to act the same way. All of this has happened before, and it's happening again. And now what I think mainly about 2,000 years ago that you have to understand is the 18 years missing. That's not a problem for me to remember. I can recount that quite readily. And solve many mysteries in the process. And I have. Laney, get down! Apparently the animals are all waking back up. What confuses me is the time period that overlaps with what I studied so hard in this lifetime. Because to sit there and learn something and repeat it over and over again, and then to realize that, oh, that interpretation is completely wrong. It's a matter of you know, neuroelectrical imprinting, and it's not something that's easily overdone. And that's where I get confused as to whether or not this took place in one or two lifetimes, whether or not one thing took place in another lifetime. Because one overlaps with a part of history and another overlaps with a part of the Bible. But I can tell from my memories that neither what's written in the Bible or what's written in history are true. And the main reason why I think both of which are demonstrably so is because of the chauvinist conspiracy at play. And when I first started to expose these ideas 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, before the election season even started, I said even if I haven't made my case in evidence, even if I haven't tied my memories to enough actual things and actual scriptures, and made even more sense of them, which, in my opinion, it does make more sense of them, I'm going to, because if I am who I say I am, I should be able to do this as an experiment, to see if I can do this for myself, and to show you if I can do this. I'm going to bend all of reality to make it very clear that a chauvinist conspiracy rooting from the land of Nod, now Russia, is not just possible, but is guaranteed to happen anytime a woman is going to be the leader of the world. That's what was going to happen. A lady of the house of Akkad was going to be married to a sultan. Actually, to an acquiescent noble who wanted to be made into a sultan and was going to gain his sultanhood and become part of a lesser power for preventing a greater power from opposing his masters. Well, she fell in love with a boy whose family had all been killed by a man named Claudius in Europe, causing the rebellion in Gaul. The rebellion which I kind of remember later putting down, but not in ways that people think. I mean, yes and no. It was about understanding who was fighting and who wasn't, and what the actual politics of the situation was. So, here I am skipping into two different time frames. Let me just finish with the latter of the two time frames. There really was no more Gaelic Empire. Okay? There were the ports of Caesar, where when he traveled, he would stay. And when Caesar traveled, he took Gauls with him. Because I don't know if you realize this, Caesar was not a Lombardi, he was a Gaul. Yep. A Galilean, if you will. Because one of those ports was called Galilee. And the reason why it was called Galilee is because it had fucking Gales there. Gauls. Gaelic people. Now, if you look and compare ancient Hebrew, not Aramaic, but ancient Hebrew, to the earliest forms of Gaelic, you find a lot of similarities. Not just in pronunciation, but in mnemonic device and grammar. And if you just simply look at the word that the Gaels used to describe themselves, the Gauls, the Gaelic people, the Celtic people, Mr. Conway, for instance, would have described themselves 2,000 years ago as, it would be Ibran. Sounds a lot like Hebrew. Now, I think there's a confusion with this and the word Iberian, which sounds similar. But I'm not entirely convinced that that's the case unless I'm missing something. Because there's this other Iberia that is a horde country. And it's where the land of Media used to be. And it may have very well been where the officers and arms salesmen that helped the Moors attack Spain came from. But other than that, Iberian is a weird thing. But Ibrian, like as in the name Brian, with an I on the front, right? Isn't that it, Mr. Conway? Which is funny because I have a good friend named Brian who's never seen the movie called The Life of Brian. And yeah. There you go. You still have the Noahic line in Ireland calling themselves Hebrews, O'Briens. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if he was the spitting image of Brian. Or if, like, does he look like you, Conway? Because you look like Brian. My friend Brian. I was wondering if you've seen an image of him, whether or not you look like him, because you look like my friend Brian. But there's something ancient about my friend Brian, and I haven't quite been able to put my finger on it. And like, I think the movie, I know this is going to sound silly, and I actually very much approve of how silly this sounds, and it makes me happy how silly, not only how silly this sounds, but how silly it would be if it's true. That Brian, my friend in this lifetime, was friends with me 2,000 years ago, and after I lost my head, people mistook him for me. And knowing the power of the muses as I do, and with the respect that I have for it, I would not be surprised if it actually did involve both a gourd and a shoe. Now bear in mind, here you sit in a universe created by someone who had invented things like the platypus and amoebas. And if those aren't two, just, I don't know, what do you call them? Stoner thoughts? I don't know what are. Let's take a beaver, put a duck bill on it, and then tarantula fangs on its hind legs. But make them more poisonous than tarantula fangs. That's a platypus. Get this up further. Alright, having to adjust so damn much. Move. Alright, now I won't have to scroll the thing every 2 fucking seconds. Kiwi. You know, the whole reason why I'm into reef tanks is because I used to live in New Zealand when I was a kid, and I was a permanent resident of New Zealand, so I'm technically kind of a Kiwi myself. I think I only lived there for like a year and a half or 2 years when I was a kid, like closer to 2 years. But all of the different metaphysical experiences combined with my hours and hours of just sitting and staring at tide pools, plus at the formulative age I was at, made it one of the most impressible periods of my life. You know, like everything from that time really stuck with me. And, you know, there's a reason I was there. Just like there's a reason why I wound up meeting Maggie there in spirit form before she was born into this lifetime. And why meeting her there triggered all my dreams of my past memories that, for my entire life, I thought were just dreams. Until I found Maggie again. And she told me back then I would call her name Kira. And I knew basics about Egyptian stuff, and I knew what a key was, and I'm like, Kira? And I knew back then that she was basically the goddess. She was Mother Nature. And much like a certain lifetime 2,000 years ago, in which she had the same name as my mother, so I called her Miriam. This lifetime she has the same name as my mother, so I call her Kira. But she told me I would. She told me I would call her Kira. Back in 1985? 84? Like right before she was born, supposedly, on her birth certificate. The only other plausible explanation is that she was actually born before that, and her birth certificate is fake, but oh well. Anyways, so it's easy to think that a bunch of things are dreams when the person that was there is never to be seen again. But when you find the person who was there with you through most of those dreams, and they're real, and you can like poke them with a stick and everything, you know, just like crazy doesn't show up on camera, crazy doesn't show up in the flesh. And well, you know, just in case you didn't see the video with the wand on the Easy Reefers channel from the other day, we have many instances in which crazy does in fact show up on camera. Like when I exorcised the other goddess, the evil goddess, also known as the Whore of Babylon in the Book of Revelation, from her seat in the sun. A still frame of that very exorcism, which is up on this channel back from 2011. Showed the face of the two-dimensional Gorgonian, the evil wife of Zeus, Callisti, Katesh, Hathor, that's my eyeball right there. And, well, in one way I trapped her there. But in another way, I simply made her realize that she always was there. Hera. The woman who wanted to be a man, but still be a woman. She wanted to be the most magnificent of all women, but wanted to be a man and have all the power of a man at the same time. That was her. She's seen past that wisdom now. She is redeemed. As the oldest of my children should be. And she, despite what her former witches' covens would possibly believe, is now married and has a child. Beautiful, beautiful child. As happy as can be. And I think basically, as an archangel, being forced to do what they were programmed to do from the beginning, and not being something that humans can possibly understand, I'd say she's earned it. Just as Gabriel has, and actually the only thing standing between me keeping my promise to him And his retirement is the troll monitors on YouTube, who seem to not think I'm serious when I say that people don't have to die after about 100 years. It's ridiculous. It's not the way you were designed. Then again, the way you have the planet operating isn't the way it was designed. So there's a lot of work to be done, but Gabriel, the angel of death, he deserves to retire. But for him to retire, you all have to ascend. Now, the fact of the matter is, the world that you all think you're still in which you have to die, was created as a construct of basically my rules and how they backfired on you. Not really on me. Well, I mean, I did get stuck in a tree for 4 fucking years, but still. Excuse me. So what I mean by that is the rule of the vote. If the majority is led to an opinion, whether it be through deception or whether it be through honest free will, as it's supposed to be, I abide by the rule. And after I was voted out, even though it took a genocide to do it, I went to sleep. And I'm pretty sure I was put there. I'm pretty sure I was cursed. But although I couldn't remember that when I started to wake up, I knew that I had allowed myself to be for a reason. And it was a path of my own redemption. In the eyes of those who I created to enslave, so that I could provide free will for everyone else. They had to not have free will so that you could have free will. And even after the end of all things and the resurrection, I mean, these things are all events of the past. I still owed them more than anyone owes me. It's just the way I see it. And succumbing to these morons that have taken over the world was basically a way for me to put my life in someone else's hands, which was a very new thing for me. And I don't mean as a human. I mean my spiritual self. And in many ways you could see me as a masochist, I suppose, but one thing you might notice about me, every time I come back weaker. And while I've been on a quest for a long time to make you stronger, I've over and over again wanted to explore more and more what it was like to be normal and weak. And to not know. Just to not know. To be born with knowledge of the afterlife. It doesn't really give you a chance to experience life. But anyways, for more on that, I suggest, if it can be found still, the parable of the imperfect circle. But anyways. Oh. Even the story of Lilith is essentially a chauvinist cover-up that negates, first of all, let me just say this. It blasphemously negates a basic understanding of not just God's power, but his basic wisdom and planning ability. And, that's kind of rude. I mean, jeez. As often as I come here and I know when things are going to go wrong, don't you think I knew from the beginning when things were going to go wrong? Anyways. Oh, my aching back. What was I talking about? Or what of what I talking about was most interesting? I'm kind of lost. I just got too many daydreams going at once right now. I was just thinking of a Fibonacci sequence as I was reading the first one. Very interesting. And if, then, good. But we won't talk anymore about that. I really hope there's a point in this Final Fantasy thing here. Because I'm leveling up these characters like a son of a bitch. I just finally fought one of the second to the biggest of the big turtle dinosaur things. Had to take out both of its legs at once and then hit its head. And I had to take out its leg 3 different times. They fucking regenerated 3 different times. So it was a hell of a battle. Got 40,000 CP. It was fun. But then it's like, okay, from there, as far as I know, there's that one. I can get better at killing that. And that's, that's cool. And then there's another one just like it, only stronger. Which is cool, but as far as roaming bad guys, that's it. And then there's in the monster arena thing, the Titan, was it the Titan Trials? There's the dragon, that's apparently the same dragon, only different versions of the same dragon, Zarinthra, or whatever. Same dragon as you find on several different Seathstone missions outside of the Titan Arena. And then you have the Neochu, which you have to get really strong just to be able to fight, but he's also a Seathstone mission outside of the Titan Arena, and it's required to fight to get the, the growth egg, which doubles the amount of CP you receive for each battle. All I can say is if I don't get to be strong enough to where we can fight Titan at the end, I'm going to be kind of pissed. Yeah, well, please forgive the pure pompity of this statement, because I can't find any other way to say it, but lucky for humanity, I came in this form equipped to address so many different areas, because the plight that we face right now is something that requires an all-hands-on-deck approach. So, for some reason in this lifetime, in this incarnation, if you will, I've become somebody who can pretty much get along with any group of people. Unless they're those easily threatenable, butthurt sociopaths. I don't really get along with those very well. But I can deal with them. You know, I leave talking about football to my wife because it's much more entertaining. But you know, I'm a car guy, fish tank guy. I'm a musician. I'm an artist. I'm a little bit of an amateur comedian. History, philosophy, science. You know, all takers welcome, no fucks given. Yeah. And as far as the solutions I have to put forward and the ways to address different aspects of society, my lifetime experience, I got to thank God for it. You know, I just, if I'm not who I think I am, He's chosen me to be just the right kind of crazy to get the job done. That's all I can say. But if I'm not who I think I am, we wouldn't have pictures like the one I just showed. We wouldn't have videos like that live stream I made the other day, and I wouldn't have this wand sitting right here in my hand. Now, if you go and look at Forgotten Origins here on YouTube, Forgotten Origins, Australian hieroglyphs. What's weird to me about these hieroglyphs is that they match a memory of a dream that I had when I was a kid. One of those dreams, right? Quote unquote dreams. And that dream is where this stick came from, which is why I use the quotation marks when I call it a dream. This is a stick. It's a stick that has naturally grown ancient hieroglyphs and a little two-sided upper and lower kingdom pyramid with little nodules. None of this is carved. This is all like bacterially grown or something. It's fucking amazing. And my first memory of this stick is when a fully grown version of Maggie handed it to me and told me I would write out my memories on it as she put a glowing blue crystal here in the end that looks like it's made to, like, hold crystals, basically. There's a little hollow out, there's a little round spot. Yeah, whatever. That fits like so. And, well, it began to glow brighter, and she just told me to point it, and I started writing shit on this stone wall. Bear in mind, I'm the mind and perspective of a 5-year-old boy. I had no idea what the hell was going on here. I was just having a dream. And I especially thought for my whole life that it was a dream. Because the first thing that I wrote with this stick that I'm holding in my hand in real life, on the wall was a stick figure. You know, a little stick figure? Little arms and legs. Made it very easy for me to convince myself that being stuck in a tree was a dream, that the whole existence of Maggie was, like, you know, stick figure. Okay, I'll just focus on that and pretend everything else is just a dream. And that carried me for a while. When I turned 13, I started getting kind of overwhelmed by my psychic abilities. And I started to really question what the hell was going on with those dreams. And I suppose maybe it was a mixture of that and hormones, but I, like, became desperate to find her again, you know? But anyways, fast forward to 2011, when I did find her again, I started remembering these dreams and trying to make tangible references to them, and I found them, like Merlin being trapped in a piece of wood. They had a translation for an old pre-English word or something, and they thought it meant wood. Like, okay, tree, wood, trees are made of wood, okay. The word in Gaelic, I think, was the same for a door sill, Conway? Or it was either Gaelic or Old English. But, you know, I don't have a link for what I read, or can't remember what the hell it was. And that was, oh, what is it? 7 years ago. Ominous. So anyways, after having the dream, I found this stick outside while, actually, I'm not sure whether it was before or after having this dream. Maybe I dreamed of the stick after finding it. Could be. I can't be certain. But I found this stick in the woods in New Zealand, and I remember it because of this shape on the end here and how it fit around my pinkies and my pinky, and it just felt like a perfect little grip for it. And I remembered the end of it because of the dream mostly. I remember studying it after the dream and, like, noticing, yeah, fucking crystal could go in there. Cool. I was a little science geek even when I was 4 and 5 years old. I had a little khaki jacket with a little elastic kind of pinstripe little things around the collar and the sleeves, right? And in every single pocket I had a little species guide, and I would go around and try to identify bugs and birds and everything. And, you know, most kids were reading Dr. Seuss. I was reading Jacques Cousteau and Arthur C. Clarke. And I left this stick in New Zealand. Didn't take it with me. And if you go on Forgotten Origins and search for Australian hieroglyphs, they found the things that I wrote in my dream. How old they technically are, I don't know. I don't know whether I was temporarily displaced in any ways. I would almost assume that I was, because where I was, what I was doing had no other bearance on reality other than the fact that it changed that stone. So that's interesting to consider when it actually happened. For all I know, they could have been done in 1984 and at the beginning of time at the same time. I don't know. Well, again, I spent most of my life thinking it's just a dream and being quite comfortable with that because the fucking thing started with a stick figure. And the stick, when I found the stick again, I didn't think too much of the dreams. I knew there was something to them, and I knew there was something related to my soulmate, and I just thought they were dreams, though, you know? But then after I found Maggie, and we searched for the Australian hieroglyphs, they found these hieroglyphs, and it starts with a stick figure. Now, what's interesting to me is that it should have been written right to left, but I remember writing it left to right. And that's one of the detractions of these Australian hieroglyphs, is that it basically goes from left to right when it should be going from right to left. But, just like I remember, left to right, and starting with a stick figure. And the stick figure actually means, in Aramaic, Hyksos, the Hyksos dialect of Aramaic. That is the Aramaic that was used by the Jews in Egypt. It means behold. Well, that fucking actually makes sense, doesn't it? Oh shit. Now I actually have to explain the existence of the stick. Because the stick appeared in New Orleans in 1996 or 7, right after my marriage with Hathor. Not legal marriage, but like, we lived together and everything. I was 16 years old. And I think I found the stick when I was 17 years old, sitting after I woke up from sleeping in a tree. Okay, the tree was the last tree on the left at the Moonwalk at the French Quarter of New Orleans. So if you go behind Jackson Square towards the river, there's this place called the Moonwalk, and they used to have these booths of trees. There were 6 going one way, 6 going the other, I think. And each one was like a maybe an 8-foot or 6-foot, somewhere between there, square wooden box with a tree growing in it. And the last one on the left is the one I used to sleep in. And this one night that I went there, it wasn't a series of nights, I slept there, woke up, found the wand. And I wasn't 100% sure, but I was pretty sure this was the same wand from New Zealand. Now, during this time period, and anybody who knew me back then will tell you that if there was such a thing as a psychic that was too powerful to put on a TV show, that would be me. Okay? let's just say if you really didn't like traffic, you wanted me as your passenger. I'm not really going to go into any more details than that, because they're kind of scary. But I did a lot of scary things back then. And this was the point at which I was kind of trying to stop. I just didn't want anything to do with it anymore. And I found this wand. And I kind of knew that I had a destiny at that point. But I knew also that I didn't understand it. But I also knew that I needed to be okay with it. You know? It was kind of like God saying, don't give up, I got a use for you later. You know, that's all. Kind of like when I was probably not but 13 years old and attempted to take my own life. Well, took my own life. I just kind of got slammed in my body after God told me I'm not done with you yet. And all the puking in the world, which I did not help the headache that I had. It lasted for about 2 weeks. Anyways. At that point, there was no tuning it out for a while. I could see them, they could see me. Only unlike anybody else they encountered, I could sense what they were up to. That made me a target. I could kind of sense their motivation, you know, like empathy for things that weren't even there. And I kept the wand for a while until I really just wanted to have nothing to do with that anymore. And I put the wand right back where I found it, in that last box on the French Quarter on the moonwalk. About 7 years later, Hurricane Katrina came. And after basically a crackdown on homeless people, they decided to get rid of those trees out there. And me and this girl I was dating at the time went walking down there just to walk down there because she liked to go and do things. The box was still there, but the trees had all been pulled out. It wasn't the storm that pulled them out, they were just pulled out, like they were about to demolish and remodel the whole thing, right? And there was the stick, exactly where I fucking left it. You know, like, okay, when you grew up with thieves and you've been a thief and you know how thieves think, and you know you're around an area where there's a bunch of homeless people and thieves and stuff, and you don't often put things down without remembering exactly how you put them and where you put them, right? After 7 years, after a fucking hurricane, after they uprooted that tree, this thing, this stick, it's just a stick, right? It was still in the same exact position I had left it. With this facing towards the corner like that, and the pyramid facing up. And here, if you want to, I could probably give you a view of the pyramid. It's going to be the only thing that can show up. There's the glyphs. Not showing up very well. The light's too far and too much configuration there. Wait, I got an idea. Not much configuration at all. Handle. End. Yeah, I've taken some high-def cell phone videos of it. If there isn't one up here, Conway, let me know. I'll post one up on this channel too. I know I put them on the old channel several times. You know, I can't remember the last time I ate something. That's probably not a good sign. I should probably eat something. More coffee. I mean, no, like food, right? Food, yeah. But anyways, found the stick after Katrina. Had it ever since. It was in the same spot. You know? Once I found it in the same spot, I knew it had to be the stick from New Zealand. And I knew I had to hold on to it. You know? Did you, Turtle, did you happen to see the Tropical Storm Gordon, Get It Done video? You can't see the wand any better in that video, but you can see what it can do. Or help me do at least. I can only wonder how old it actually is. When I woke up in 2011, I found out through, instinctual Googling, basically. I'd have a feeling about something, search for what it is, find out that I was right, move on to the next thing, kind of. One of them was Maori eucalyptus wands. This looks like it was made from eucalyptus. This looks just like this smoothness here. Some of the notches, of course not all of the notches, but it looks just like one of those eucalyptus wands. And that's hilarious. I should tell the long version of the story just to get in how significant New Zealand is. But, let's just say before the last great cataclysm, which was 2,000 years ago, as far as I can tell, there wasn't, like, the same lands as there are now. The world wasn't as big. Everything was more closer together. And I want to say it wasn't long before that Australia and New Zealand and Japan and, well, Greater Zealandia, which you probably called Atlantis, were off the coast of Europe and North Africa. And to remember that, and to try to believe I'm here, it's kind of bizarre. I'm here in this continent that didn't exist. Sure seems like it existed for a long time. But I'm telling you, this one, the final expansion was caused by the cataclysm 2,000 years ago, but the creation of this continent started from the first what would be 2 out of 3? That occurred, I think, about 6,000 or 7,000 years ago. I would say about 5,800 BC. But it could be before that. And that would be the only thing I've seen that comes close to that as far as what you have written down is the Vimana Wars. And I haven't had much experience with that. I basically just looked into that enough to confirm that it had to be about that. And that was back in 2011. I only was really interested in proving who I was so that I realized that I had no choice. And I had to confirm my memories and research what they were about in order to get my bearings. Basically, in order to figure out from which direction the enemy of humanity was invading the world from. And I would just sit there and look at the map and consider the Russians and consider the Chinese and know that none of it was quite right. And I'm like, no, you gotta understand. What I'm looking for is more like Mordor here, okay? It's like the Horde, but not with orcs. That's exactly what I said to my wife at the time. But the center of that power base, that the Communist Party that took over China, the Russian mafia that continued to wield power through this period which we were foolish enough to think that the Cold War was over. It centers around a place called Ulaanbaatar. And it's called the Horde because it's called the Horde. Like this, for instance, the map on the right is a map of the Golden Horde. Yeah. While I give a lot of credence to the interesting nature of those scrolls, their proximity to the Horde, their continued obvious dissolution and reinterpretation and everything else, leads me to believe that they're basically there to cover up some original version that's not allowed to be known. And it's also very likely that the original version was destroyed during a period of captivity, and that a verbal tradition was later written down. It just seems like one of those types of stories to me from what I read of it. Because there's some things that hint at metaphor that clearly just seem to me like real things, but that paint themselves graphically and insist on, tangibility, as if they've been rewritten. And you find a lot of that in the King James Version, for sure. Oh my God. I'm going to have to stop broadcasting just because I'm out of cigarettes. Can't keep talking if I can't keep smoking. Time to fire up the shorts. Oh crap. Hold on. My other light's still bright. Oh, I got the remote right here. Yeah, I don't even think the store that has my brand is open right now. I'm mostly just worried because my wife's going to be aggravated with me when she wakes up. Oh, I got like 4 half cigarettes in the back there. Hold on a second. Let me go grab them right quick. Victory is mine. Oh yeah, speaking of which, I would go ahead and I guess I'll just put some freaking music on for y'all. I'll try not to get anything too country. I'm gonna refresh my coffee with the Keurig machine. In fact, let me just do it here so we can look at the fish tanks. Alright. Neville! G'day, mate. Give me just a second to rejoin. I'm about to refresh my coffee. I did a 3-hour stream on Easy Reefers, and now I've been on here for 2 hours, so bear with me. How are you doing, sir? Good to see you again. Been a while. Oh, yeah. I'm putting on a song other than the Final Fantasy theme. How's some booze for you? Full-hearted booze.
darling, let me be. Oh, something happened, mercy on me. Bye baby, I ain't ready to see. I'm coming to you, baby, with some more that I knew. I got the cold-hearted blues. Oh, please have mercy on me, baby, I got nothing to lose. I got the cold-hearted blues. I got the cold-hearted blues, yeah.
Well, that's kind of worked, I suppose. It was a lot of work to get my tripod legs to, like, extend. They've been in the same position around these saltwater tanks for far too long, so, like, all the screws have kind of rusted a little. I'm like, oh, I see. They've made an aluminum tripod with shitty steel screws. No wonder I could afford it. Oh, excuse me, that's aluminium for the other gents. Aluminium? That's a little better. Oh, shit. I wonder if you can see the 555 on there. You just barely make it out. That's the symbol of the upper and lower kingdoms in the first realm. Well, as far as I know. It's the husk within the temple of creation that also houses it. Would y'all stop moving the microphone, the camera stand? Dingo, up. Go and lay down in your bed in your room. In your room. Dingo. Over there. Yeah. They're not exactly clear to begin with. But if you look in the center of the oval, that's what I'm talking about. Those three figures. As near as I could make out. And the kitten is going crazy. Actually, you know what? It's faded. Changed. First five is still. Looks like the first five is still visible. The second five has like the darkening is different, and there's like a five scratched into it, kind of like indented. And then in the middle, it's become really blotchy, and it looks like there's a tiny dark 6 in the middle of that. You can kind of make that out on the camera, the little tiny dark 6 in the middle. If anything, on this camera, it looks to me like 625. But that's the oval. Obscuring the top of the 5. There we go. But it definitely seems like it's changed recently. That's weird. I mean, that's where I put my thumb. It might have just eroded that away. That's what I'm pretty sure happened. But I don't take anything for granted with this stick. Not anymore. Laney, what you doing, kid? Alright, so I guess now I gotta get back up and put the computer back in. Get the kitten off my lap. Really? I'm going to carry you that whole time so you didn't have to get off my lap, and then I'm going to sit back down and you're going to jump, huh? No pleasing this one. Alright. Now to put the camera stand back the way it was. I think. I hope. I might be able to do this. It's one of them ones where it's got the 3 different little adjusters on each of the little legs. Open up all 3 of them and then slide them all down and close them all back up. And then go on to the next 3. Open them up and slide them all down and close them back up. And by the time you're done, there's just no way it's going to be sitting level. Oh, that's good. That one doesn't even hold anymore. Oh, that's good. All right. I mean, that's a less than spectacular view, but I like the waving grass. Anyways. So the wand is interesting, but I've always considered it to be something more of a limitation, if anything, for demonstration purposes, to help me focus in times that I wouldn't otherwise be able to focus, that kind of thing. It's like it's a give and take situation. And yeah, that's the little intro to the Final Fantasy 13 playing on the TV, taunting me. So anyways, back to the subject. Back to just to the pure postulation of it. What's the whole title? The only logical reason for a Christ-Coverup is its association to the Goddess-Coverup. So what that means is basically, if one were to confirm the transposition of names and figure out that it was in fact John and Mary, not Jesus and his homo-incestuous little feminine brother John, and that Jesus means I am in Gaelic, and that Jesus was a Galilean, as he said, and as the Jews accused him of not being a Jew because he was a Galilean, you know. So if you look at the name in Gaelic, you realize that the reason why early Christians started using the name Jesus was because to say someone's name is to wield their power, and that was, considered a sacred thing. To say I am in your own language is another type of blasphemy. But to say I am to say the name of God in another language or in the language of an incarnation that is not your own, it seems like there's nothing wrong with that. It seems like a logical way to go. And what you had was people not willing to use the actual name, who didn't speak Gaelic, calling the man Jesus. The ones who spoke Gaelic referred to him as John the Baptist, or Johannes, or Joachim. Now, when you take just the singular theory that Christ marrying an imperial princess and Christ being the heir of Gaul, okay, possibly being the heir of Caesar even, you can see why all of the history and all of the art and all of the imagery, once you go and look at it all again, becomes an easy decoding to the relationship between Christ and the goddess. And you can't see the reincarnating Christ that comes over and over again without seeing the goddess. Everything about the different incarnations of Christ revolve around his love for the goddess and the children they created together, which are humans. So, to cover up the goddess, first and foremost, you have to disambiguate, you have to ambiguate the identity of Christ as being one identity instead of being two people, a man and a woman. And you have to take all of the words that they spoke that everybody knew about and say that it was all this one person with this title, Jesus. So what you have is a book with words in red. Some of them were spoken by Miriam, and some were spoken by John. And the idea that Mary's existence implies some sinful nature on the part of Christ and would destroy Christianity is not the case. What it implies is the validity of Christianity, and the fact that all the hypocrites who have destroyed it are morons. But this chauvinist conspiracy continued to perpetuate on through the 90s, in which we saw the Da Vinci Code movies and stuff like that. And we were told that we only had one of two options. We were told we either had to believe it wasn't true, so we could still have faith, or that if we thought it was true, we could no longer have faith. But the fact of the matter is, the fact that it's true means that our faith should be strengthened, if and only if we understand the history associated with it. But they didn't want us to understand the history associated with it, because it's all about Russia. It's all about the Horde. And Russia has been sending us documentarians and news people and people with British accents from Canada for generations now. And while funding satanic churches and while funding basically organizations that turn Christians into hypocrites, they've also sent these professors here to make atheism the logical choice, basically. You see, when it all comes down to it, the Soviet Union's war was never with America. It's with God. Until you start realizing that, you're going to have a hard time understanding just how powerful they are. And what a time for the hackers to show up. So, you really don't have to take my word for this, okay? You know, I'm just like Geordie LaForge, right? You don't have to take my word for it. Butterfly in the sky. Okay. Yeah, I think I mixed two different series. You can simply look at the two distinct personalities of Christ that are exhibited in the scriptures. In the four Gospels, you have two distinct personalities of Christ. And you have a seeming attempt to ambiguate, two characters, John the Baptist and Christ. You have emphasis that these two different people are important, but there's some cases in which the person that you're told is Christ acts a little more like John the Baptist. And, well, I've said this plenty of times, but I think it is the finest example, logically, to this effect, that these were two different people. There was a woman, a loving, caring pacifist who was trying to, and did, perform miracles of creation that only really a goddess would even think of to do. Okay. And there was someone acting like a man, being confrontational, turning over tables in the temple. And, you know, if you, again, just into that example that I was referring to, what kind of a man can single-handedly sack a Roman-occupied temple? More than likely a mercenary, yes? I'm the one who remembers the 18 years. And you don't know about them unless I've told you. And what I've told you, if I've told you, is that I was a mercenary. And when Peter drew his sword, and I said, those who live by the sword die by the sword, what did I know about myself at that time? That I was about to die. And in my opinion, I deserved it. But in retrospect, it's just because I didn't kill the right people. Anyways. By that point, Miriam had been murdered. My will was all but broken. And honestly, I felt like if I had to proceed from there, my message would be lost. But if I died while it was still clear to people, it would be amplified. So I let them take me. But as far as what they did to kill me, at that point, didn't take. But I think you know that part of the story. And as far as the guy who stabbed me in the side, I still have that scar. But I don't know. I was asleep. Weird things can happen while I'm asleep. Because when I'm asleep, I'm actually more awake. Anyways. Yeah, the reason why only the overseer can travel through time, the reason why he's referred to as the sleeper who awakens and the traveler, is because by definition, time travel can only be possible for deity. Once someone participates in time travel, they actually become, technically, deity. They single-handedly are the reason for the shaping of an entire universe. Once you time travel, that's what you are. You and only you exist prospectively between the world that was before you traveled through time and the world that exists afterward. It does not continue to exist parallel. You've effectively destroyed it and recreated it. That's why time travel is not possible for basically anyone but whoever sits on the throne of God. Or, as I affectionately refer to it, my chair. What can I say? I can be possessive. It's a splendid chair. That's where Hathor was. And, well, now it really doesn't matter anymore. Because the universe we're in right now, time travel is not possible at all. Yet, it's completely possible for everyone at the same time. Ascension is nothing but a doorway at this moment. Humanity just needs to step through it. But there are bungee cords pulling you back. And people start looking through windows and cracks in the wall and all these different things. Nope, it's the door. It's a fucking door. Realize this. Boom. You're there. You see, there's never been interaction on my part in a way that would cause men to want to bow down or should demand men to bow down. Anyone who wants you to bow down is a false god. They want to feel like they have power that they don't already have. You see? I don't require anybody's recognition. I cannot deny who I am. Huh? I cannot just stop being. Well, to a point I can. But I can't just stop being capable of manipulating the universe with a daydream. I just can't. It's not that it's, fun for me and I can't resist. It's just who I am. Those things just get channeled through me because the nature of the universe is such that your ascension requires it to. These laws have to exist through my existence so that they can later exist through your existence. You see, because one day you know, if you cross your T's and dot your I's, or dot your T's and cross your I's, whichever you prefer, will have your own universe in communion with this universe once the ascension process is complete. Now, in some ways, it's already complete. And you're just asleep, waiting to wake up to the dream that is actually reality. And the reason why I can tell this is because when I look up at the stars at night, they say hello to me. And I know that I'm not just high or drunk or whatever, because I can take any one of my friends or neighbors and take them outside in the sky and say, look at that star, try to hold your head as still as possible. I'm going to make it move. It's a star. It's a fucking ball of gas burning billions of miles away. It shouldn't be able to move, should it? No, it's the hall of your ancestors. And it's as far as they decided it should be. And if you want to go there, you'll get there when they decide you should. And that is the distance to it. And if you want to know what nebulas are, just bear in mind that when you ascend, you have limitless choices. You know, and I think, frankly, that if you want to make the best of the afterlife, you should really consider watching Star Trek or something like that, just to give yourself some inspiration. What kind of worlds you want to create. But, you know, at the same time, bear in mind that the key to getting there is to not want to get there. To focus on the life that you have and what you have to do while you're here. Without this world, those worlds cannot exist. And all the people that you've loved through all of your lives will not be able to commune with you. So this world has to be saved. Anyways, good morning, Joey. Oh, morning, Carlos. Oh, excuse me. Coffee burps. Delicious. Well, the truth is summed up simply by recognizing what you are and what that makes your creator. And at the same time realizing what your creator is and what that makes you. And instead of expecting God to be something imaginary, you should be expecting something more parental. I think the key to it all, when it comes down to it, is unraveling the chauvinist cover-up of history. In order for people who know history, who know science, who know politics especially, to understand the truth that has been covered up, they need to see the blankets as wool and not grass. Anyways. That right there will lead to the understanding of what some Jews to this day still call the reincarnating Christ. And even Dr. Henry Morris wrote about it in the Creationist Bible as an exposition to a limited theory that he doesn't agree with. And there are many different schools of thought on this, people who track different incarnations and have different opinions on who was and wasn't an incarnation, right? But when it all comes down to it, understanding basically God's humanity is the key to understanding your potential. And this chauvinist cover-up that we call his story, history, that's the part that people don't recognize about it. It's not just a matter of it being somebody's story. It's a matter of it always being a his story, never a her story. And frankly, you're not thinking. If God is in fact a man, what would he want most of the stories to be about? So the ones who want stories to be about men, they probably don't like God very much. That's all I'm saying. But you see, women are fickle things. Very directional creatures. And need to be given good cause to stay one way or the other. And, if you just go creating someone to be your friend, to be your companion, you can imagine that they might be a little creeped out by you, possibly a little resentful of the situation. They might need convincing, especially if you tried to create them as your equal, that they actually have free will and aren't just some programmed slave. He's fine. I enjoy him. Yeah. Do more listening, the answers will come. Except for, I'm not even going to say that out loud. He wouldn't know answers if they jumped up and bit him in the needle nuts. Anyway. Indeed, I've met some very wise people who are completely deaf, so the world is more than the noise that fills it. Especially these days. But anyways, What were we talking about? Talking about the fact that I only have 7 cigarettes left. Freaking back is just all cramped up. I just don't want to start incoherently babbling and risk repeating myself too much. You know, repeating previous incoherent babbling. Wireless electricity has been tried before, destroyed the earth, should not be tried again. That's my thoughts on wireless electricity. There are angelic beings who will stop you from even attempting it. Under my orders. Just to be sure. There have been universes, and there are certainly worlds, and basically previous iterations of reality here, in which machines played a much bigger role than they do now. But there's reasons why all of that was preternatural and was designed to develop the interests and personalities of certain beings before this universe came to existence. But if you're sensing that to be real, then you might have a connection to one of those beings, and therefore have a connection to those preternatural universes. Like the ones illustrated in Final Fantasy movies, for instance, or games. Now I see what you're saying. I thought you were talking about Tesla energy networks. Those are bad for, they're bad for large areas of rock, which means the Earth itself. The resonance is not something that you can even remotely hope to compensate for. Tesla coils are just unapplicable. But, low amperage ones are fine. Local areas. That kind of thing. But as far as the heliocentric model of the universe that is non-gravitational but electric, that's what you're talking about. That's really diminishing. I mean, it's kind of it's a more effective way for a human to understand it, but it's really diminishing the actual extra spatial, extra temporal nature of these things. So not magnetic, although there is an energy transfer process that is perceivably magnetic and arranges the way that things are coordinated in the matter that scientists have detected that theory is based on. But that is not the foundation of the arrangement. The foundation of the arrangement is spatial and temporal. Okay? What they're detecting is actually the perceptual arrangement of the conduit between here and the quote-unquote afterlife, or the rejoining of the ascended to their spawn. That is actually what makes up that energy. And they call it in Final Fantasy Mako energy. How about that? Yeah, imagine that. What you've been looking at is what's referred to in the Final Fantasy series as Mako energy. Bitchin', ain't it? Kitten. Hello, kitten. Say hello, kitten. I'm sorry for ignoring you all night. I've been streaming for a long time, huh? Nope. Humanity is definitely not a shell. There is not some lack of purpose to this. In fact, the key to ascension is realizing that humanity is the purpose. The key to ascension is realizing that limitation is the key to ascension. If you immediately know the candlelight is fire, the meal was cooked a long time ago. So, think of it in terms of releasing your burden. In this case, you see humanity itself as the burden, but that is not the case. Humanity is the blessing. And in this case, in this new universe, I will just in terms of absolute potential, not necessarily realizable, but there is absolute potential right now in this universe, the way it is constructed, with the rules that are in place, for basically the Federation plus the Holy Grail. So if the whole Federation got to drink from the Holy Grail, that would be the only, of course, you'd wind up seeing that quote-unquote space is more like what you call it, the little Thor movies, the realms. It's more like realms than Star Trek. That's why stars move, because they're not what you think they are. The world isn't what you think it is. It can be. Right now there isn't even a vote on the subject. But I'm open. I'm not going to force it. I'm just going to leave the possibility. No, that's again diminishing the feminine. especially considering that it is the mother who guides you in the afterlife, even when it was Shiva or Hera. Let's just say if you were a deity, being a man, okay, being a male with male instincts, okay, would you rather spend your time taking care of the dead and, oh, come here, oh, everything's okay, here's what you can do now, or would you fuck with people while they're alive? So that's why it was Lord Shepherd and Mother Nature. So you get to the afterlife, and the natural order of things is for the feminine presence to embrace you, and the masculine presence to judge you. It's always a man who really wants to test you. We're not talking about a woman looking at you as a prospect. That's why that rings true into the, ears of men who don't feel like they know women very well. But the very idea that Goddess takes a certain role that is negative is the hallmark of things that have been usurped by the Horde. It's the quintessential thing that's been replaced or has been used to replace everything that the original church, which was a very much feminine oriented but balanced church, and if you ever wonder what happened to chivalry, that's what happened to chivalry. It, like all other aspects of this ideology, has been stamped out. And one really has to know true love and even parenting to actually understand the perspective I'm talking about here. And to understand why, therefore, the rules of the universe were created as they were. I'm not trying to balance anything, dearie. I'm just explaining how things are because of the way I made them. I teach. You listen. You see, the thing is, when you have a cup that's full and holy water pours into it, it overflows. And you can't drink because you're busy wiping up the mess. So you need to empty your cup. Because a cup that's already full cannot be poured into. Now, I can explain the way things were. I can explain the way things are. And unless you believe that the bad guys are going to win, I can explain the way things will be. That's all I'm doing. Emotions. You mean chemical emotions or lasting commitments? Because people tend to confuse those two different things. They call them both emotions. Emotions can be amplified by demons. Lasting commitments are typically the targets of demons. Boy. Hello to kitten. I love this fucking cat, man. You just look down, she's just on your lap and grabbing your leg or something. She's always like cute with her paws. Are you purring because I'm talking about you? Maybe you just want me to pet you more. Okay. See right now, my emotion is, oh, that's cute. My lasting commitment is to see the blessed puzzle of reality that lines up, that allows me to keep pets that love me, that are fuzzy and cute, and to be thankful for it. It's too fucking cute. Now, to consider that being in the flesh, or being a human being, or being mortal, or being limited is a curse in some way, it's blasphemous because you're denying the purpose of creation itself. Okay. Picture it this way. What you're actually asking for in doing so is asking to experience reality in a way in which that kitten is cute because you made it cute, because you allow it to be cute, not because something beyond your control and fate and destiny or anything like that brought you a cute kitten and you had to rescue it and feed it and love it and let it live, and you get to enjoy its love for you on a real basis. The same is true for God and human beings. I mean, not that I think of you as kittens. Some people are far less intelligent than kittens. I'm kidding. I'm not really kidding. Oh, okay. I have to stretch my back. It's just hurt a little too bad. No, male and female are not separated between destruction and creation. That is an old universe that was attempted to be created by a false god. Okay, that is not the true nature of the universe. It's not balanced either way. It's balanced both and together. Indeed. That's the tree I come from. I am that tree, and that tree is me. Other than that, I'm mostly German, French, and Irish, and a little bit of dragon. running out of cigarettes by the minute. What an unfortunate morning. Can't believe. So what the fuck are smoking? Oh God, my back hurts like hell. Watch that video. You'll understand what I mean by part dragon. But be wary of repeating any mantras that denote one entire aspect of things on a deistic level, because they all, you know, to one, on the one hand male, on the one hand female, okay, because the ones that denote certain aspects of the feminine always seem to inherently have an aura of blame for problems on the feminine. And it's generally speaking the opposite that's true. Most problems are caused by men. Often caused by men because of their want for women, but still caused by men. Not by kittens. This little fucker's too precious. See, always with the paws. She's grabbing my arm like that. Alright. So, obviously there's really no end to this discussion. We could go on and on about conflagrations by the Catholic Church into different aspects of religions that aren't even real religions to begin with, that the Romans put in place at the time, that basically there was a similar movement to what's going on with Trumpism in this country going on in the Roman Senate, in which the rich fuckers began to act like populists and started insulting veterans. Yeah, did I mention all this has happened before? And I had connections to rich people, but was considered to be of poor upbringing because I was adopted. And well, let's just say without me, things didn't go very well for them afterwards, because they couldn't make any good decisions, and all of the former Magdalenian Empire, now known as the Roman Empire, fell to the Horde. And there's been individual little divided countries that have remained independent kind of since then. But over and all throughout history, it's just been less and less countries that are allowed to even debate truth. And what is truth is handed to them by whoever needs them to believe whatever they need to believe for the agenda they need them to serve. Just like the truth that you're handed is an agenda that makes you think that women are evil, that first and foremost keeps you from really doing anything in this day and age but objectifying women. Keeps you from finding the right woman, keeps you from establishing the right kind of family that can keep your country in the West, whatever it is, strong. Mine being America. We obviously have that problem here where the family as an institution has been attacked through what we now consider to be a format which used to be one of the first countries of the Horde to basically kidnap people of other religions and cultures just to send back deceivers and infiltrators. That empire was called media. And there were media nights everywhere in those days. And, people talk a lot about the Jews. Well, there's a difference between the Jews and the false Jews. And if you're an Old Testament Christian and you don't like gay people, you should realize that you don't like gay people because you're a Jew. If you don't like gay people and you don't like Jews, why are you an Old Testament Christian? Because it was written by Jews that don't like gay people, basically. And the reason why you don't like gay people is because the Old Covenant tells you so. And if you're a Christian, then you should believe in what's called the New Covenant. And the New Covenant made it very clear that you should judge not lest you be judged yourselves, and that, if two women were grinding together in the field, one would be taken and the other would not. If two men were lying together in the same bed, in the end of days, one would be taken and one would not. That's because the New Covenant was given during a time of civilization and of divide and conquer, of the Horde. The Old Covenant was given like 3,600 years prior, in a time in which humans weren't the only race of beings on this planet, and most other races of beings on this planet didn't like fucking humans very much. They were being sought out for extermination, and every last little drop of sperm had to go to fertilizing an egg. Every sperm is sacred. Who was already thinking about it? Who was already thinking about every sperm is sacred? I know it wasn't just me. If that sperm gets wasted, God gets quite irate. Yeah, see, that's Old Testament shit. They were in the valley in the middle of just fucking hell, basically. And there were all kinds of weird-looking bipedal things. Human-like, but no. Most of them ate other human-like things. Yes, ate. As in, I suppose you'd call them cannibalistic if you wanted to call them human. But there are as many cannibalistic cultures that came after them that were basically half-breeds between these people and the people that they kidnapped. Those half-breed cultures remained cannibalistic. Would sacrifice babies and ugh. Dragons! I like dragons. But anyways, yeah, I think it's about time to end the broadcast. That's, quite a shift for me. But, in summary, there hasn't been a trace of proper Christian faith, that is, the combined masculine-feminine understanding that was Johannism or now remains in a limited fashion in Gnosticism for about 500 years. For the past 500 years, even what Gnostic scriptures you can find have been limited to, and even the ones that we've found recently, you could assume, because of the vast power structure that these people still maintain, that you're not going to hear of anything that they don't approve of. So even the things that seem to unmask the feminine have been limited in how much of them we've been able to see. And I don't just mean the little parts that are missing. I'm talking they're keeping big chunks of it back. They're probably keeping big chunks of it from us. And the true Christ, when you realize that he is the male part of the star-crossed lovers in all of ancient mythos, you can find greater meaning in everything that you read. And you can find a real closeness with whoever it is created you. I promise you that. When you realize that that's God coming into reality to experience life the same way you experience it. And on top of that, the very nature of God is that all the pain and suffering that you ever feel is felt by God. And the way people blame pain and suffering on God without understanding free will, without understanding the mechanism of reality, and that everything we experienced is also experienced by God. People really need that to get the experimental and experiential nature of the events in the Old Testament, even, especially the New Testament, and also to see just what about the book of Revelation and all the other apocalyptic prophecies have hidden in them, as well as what's obviously been embellished by the people who've kept the stories. And what we found when we've studied the Bible so far on this channel is that what couldn't be hidden was what they really couldn't understand to begin with. Because by the time different people got to different parts of the text and were responsible for quote-unquote translating them, they weren't aware enough to cover up everything that was there. And we can find little keys here and there to the greater truth of things. And that not only has a lot of the events that people in the evangelical think of things is expecting now but clearly has wrong. They've all happened before already. But just how misguided their overall interpretations of things are. And how these people from the beginning have misinterpreted and mistaught the basic scriptures, even the story of Adam and Eve, in a way that makes people think less of women, makes women think less of themselves, make men think less of women. And it's not psychologically healthy. And what it does is it destroys our defensive strength as a civilization. It is, by the very essence of its effects, succumbing to our enemies. And I think I've demonstrated over the past couple of years that we definitely have enemies. And, you know, go back from the Templars. Realize what you're told about why they were killed is bullshit. And all the little conspiracies spread by all these little Russian shell channels, that's also bullshit. They were killed for being Johannites, for knowing that John and Mary weren't just married, but that their son, still here? Their son basically was the progenitor of all of the noble royalty of Europe. Isn't that something? Now, that Europe's been wiped away, and we're in a land that was founded by those people as a safe place. A land that was settled beginning long before 1492, when the Horde discovered it. And while our foundations were very patriarchal, we have over time become, well, had become, past tense, a progressive improvement upon what we were before with every generation. And we were about to reach that state where men and women, I don't even like the phrases men and women, but men and women would be equal again. And once again, the same old horde did it. Fucked it all up. For the same reasons. Women cannot be seen as equal to men. Then husbands would have to have too much respect for their wives. Then children would have respect for their parents. Then families would stay together. And America would be strong. It's not because of a damn button having the wrong word on it. They hated Hillary Clinton because it was their strategy to hate Hillary Clinton. And they brainwashed people into hating Hillary Clinton because that was their strategy. The same way they've brainwashed people for years into hating Eve. When in fact, if anybody could be ever forgiven for a mistake, it would be her. And if you want to be chauvinistic about it, as far as discernment, did not her husband fail to guide her? Anyways. So, that's going to be all for now. Thanks for hanging out, Mr. Turtle. And thanks for stopping by, Joey, Mr. Rodriguez, and whoever else came here, Mr. Conway. Is that everybody? And, y'all click the like button Don't forget to check your subscription. And y'all take it easy. Don't take it all. Peace.
Takes my pain back to a place out of another thing.